Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Now, as you can see, we've got a brand new setup, and the reason for this is because we've got rid of the big black bookcase that used to be behind me in my old backgrounds, and we've got this rather lovely new bijou bookcase. Basically, I have taken a decision to get rid of a lot of physical books and to concentrate on keeping the ones I really love, like my first editions and books with a lot of pictures and books that you can't get electronically, and practically all my novels are now on my Kindle Paperwhite. Another reason for this is that since I had the lenses in my eyes replaced with artificial lenses, it's so much easier to read using a Kindle because it lights up. I don't have to worry about having the right lighting in the room, and also not only does it store all my novels and things I'm reading, but it helps me when I go to sleep at night because it's easy. You can up and down the brightness and just, well, I've read more since I've had my Kindle than I ever did before. Okay, well, before we launch into this story of a few books I'd like to bring you, please do like this video and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you to all the people that have just subscribed, and thank you to everybody who has continued to subscribe as well. Well, as you can see, there's a number of books behind me, and I've pulled out just a few that I thought I could bring your attention to, and I'm going to talk about those. And I'm also going to talk about some other books that I'd highly recommend that you have a good read of. Now, the first book I'm going to talk about is Billy Liar by Keith Waterhouse, and it's one of my favourite books. This book was published a long time ago when I was not even born, I think, 59. Yeah, 59 it was published, but it's always been in my parents' bookcase and now it's with me. It's the story of a young man who lives a very rich fantasy life and about the woman that tries to get him to perhaps get back to reality a little bit more. He also has a girlfriend, and he calls her the witch, and that's not in a very nice way. And I'd just like to read you a couple of things that stuck out to me as being particularly hilarious when I was young and I read this for the first time. And Billy, he's called Billy Liar because he lies all the time to everyone around him. But his girlfriend, well, this is how he describes her. The point about the witch was that she was completely sexless. She was large, clean, and, as I knew to my cost, wholesome. I had learned to dislike everything about her. I did not care to begin with for her face, the scrubbed, honest look, as healthy as porridge. I disliked her for her impeccable shorthand, her senseless, sensible shoes, and her handbag crammed with oranges. The witch did little else but eat oranges. She had in fact been peeling a tangerine when I proposed to her during a youth club hike to Ilkley Moor, and her way of consummating the idea had been to pop a tangerine quarter into my mouth. She had not been very much amused when I said, "With this orange I thee wed." And I find this book highly amusing, but then Keith Waterhouse was a very highly amusing writer. So, Billy Liar. The next book, also a book from my youth, bit of a weighty tome this, and this was given to me by my dad when I was very young. I'm just looking to see. Yes, this edition, 1971, so it must have been on my 10th birthday. And of course it is The Lord of the Rings. And I read this at a young age, and it was difficult. I'll say that for it. It was very difficult. But I persevered, and it took me a very long time, but I did finish it. And the great thing about this book is that the pages, even the very pages, are so thin and almost magically thin. The maps that you see in here, when I got this, it reminded me of the maps there used to be in the C.S. Lewis Narnia books, which I'd grown up with from a very young age. And there's the different languages that sometimes are printed in the book. And I thought that was amazing, that you could have not just typewritten language, but say Elven languages and Dwarfish languages and that sort of thing in a book. And all the characters that we've come to know from the films obviously are so much more fleshed out in the book. There's more things that happen in the book, and I just think it's one of the best books ever written. If you've got patience, I would say stick with it. I'm going to read you a tiny little bit. There were rumours of strange things happening in the world outside, and as Gandalf had not at that time appeared or sent any message for several years, Frodo gathered all the news he could. Elves, who seldom walked in the Shire, could now be seen passing westward through the woods in the evening, passing and not returning. But they were leaving Middle-earth and were no longer concerned with its troubles. There were, however, dwarves on the road in unusual numbers. The ancient east-west road ran through the Shire to its end at the Grey Havens, and the dwarves had always used it on their way to the mines in the Blue Mountains. They were the hobbits' chief source of news from distant parts, if they wanted any, and as a rule, dwarves said little and hobbits asked no more. But now Frodo often met strange dwarfs of far countries seeking refuge in the west. They were troubled, and some spoke in whispers of the enemy and of the land of Mordor. That name hobbits only knew in legends of the dark past, like a shadow in the background of their memories, but it was ominous and disquieting. So, as I say, bit of a tome, but definitely worth it. Now, the third physical book that I'm going to show you is The Creeps by John Connolly. And this is the third in a series of 3 books about a boy who starts off the books being 11. His name's Samuel Johnson. And these books can be read by anybody, really, from the age of 11 upwards. And I found them when I was ill, and if anyone out there's had chemotherapy, you'll know what sort of insomnia it just keeps you up all night. And I was reading a lot of these books, and I dropped John Connolly a line and said, these books have helped me through some very difficult nights of insomnia, told him a little bit about myself, and he sent me this book, which is very lovely. And obviously I'll keep this one forever because he's written in it to me. It says, beware demons, various things. But yes, the story of Samuel Johnson, there's 3 books. There's one called The Gates, where he finds out what's going on in his village. There's one called The Infernals, and there's this one called The Creeps. And I'll just read you a tiny little bit of this because it's a nice way to introduce you to John Connolly's style of writing. In a small terraced house in the English town of Bingham, a birthday party was underway. Bingham was a place in which, for most of its history, very little interest had ever happened. Unfortunately, as is often the case in a place in which things have been quiet for a little too long, when something interesting did happen, it was very interesting indeed. More interesting, in fact, than anybody might have wished. The gates of hell had opened in a basement in Bingham, and the town had temporarily been invaded by demons. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Bingham had never really been the same since. So that's the third book in this trilogy, and I will say that John Connolly is one of my favourite authors, and I've met him a couple of times, and he is an absolutely delightful man. He's Irish, and his most famous books are the Charlie Parker series of novels. He's written 20 of these, 20, and the first one was called Every Dead Thing, and that was published in 1999. And his last, or not last, but his most recent, I should say, his most recent book in that series, the 20th, is coming out this August 2022, and that's called The Furies. Now, Charlie Parker in these stories is a private detective. He used to be a policeman in America. Most of the stories are based in Maine, in northeast United States. And the sense of place that Connolly brings to his work is very detailed, and you can really, when you read, sometimes you don't get a sense of what it looks like where the story is happening, but with these you do. And the thing about Charlie Parker is that his books are all about supernatural crime and thrilling events. So they're supernatural crime thrillers is what I was trying to say. Not in a ridiculous over-the-top manner, but in a very philosophical and often quite frightening way, and very believable as well. So if you are interested in crime thrillers and you like them dusted with the supernatural, have a look at the Charlie Parker series. I'm rereading them all again because obviously reading 20 books about the same person's not enough to do it once, and I'm enjoying them, if not more, the second time around, because you get a little bit more out of a book, I think, when you read it again. A couple of other authors I'd like to bring to your attention. One of them is Craig Schaefer, and he's written 9 books about a character of his called Daniel Faust. And these books are about mobsters and magicians, and they're all set in the present day as well, but in a sort of, not a parallel world, but set in this world, but showing you a few things that you perhaps hadn't been aware might be going on. So sorcerers mash up with gangsters, mash up with gods and demons and devils, and it's a ride. It's a ride. So 9 books in the Daniel Faust series by Craig Schaefer. Very exciting, real page turners actually. I like them very much. Something a little bit more slow paced and a little bit closer to home for us British readers. Phil Rickman is a very good novelist, and he's written 16 books in a series that I've read, and they're all about a lady called Merrily Watkins, and she is a parish priest. She's a single mother. She's very relatable. I found when I first read the first Merrily Watkins book, I wasn't quite sure what to make of her being a priest, but even though that's not sort of my jam, as it were, I find that she's an absolutely real character. She's got so many levels and she's got so much going on in her life, and there's nothing pretentious about her, and she basically lives and works in the Diocese of Hereford, around the cathedral there and in the villages around there and around in the Wye Valley. So it's a beautiful landscape for the stories to be set in, and very enjoyable. So if you've got time to think about starting a 16-book series, the Merrily Watkins series could be the books for you. And lastly, in this particular roundup of authors and female heroines, I am incredibly fond of Harry Bingham's heroine, Fiona Griffiths. She's a Welsh police officer, and she doesn't suffer, she has something called Cotard's syndrome, or Cotard's disease, which is where a person is convinced that they are actually dead. So this goes a long way to informing how she approaches her police work. And I do love a crime novel, and I love crime television series, and I like true crime, but these novels give it a whole new angle and a new way of looking at that sort of story. So if you're looking for police procedural set in the UK, but with a little bit of an unusual twist, then Harry Bingham's Fiona Griffiths stories could be the ones for you. Well, obviously I don't want this video to go on and on and on for hours, which it probably could if I was going to talk about, you know, great swathes of books that I've read. But I will say thank you very much for watching. I hope you've got this far into the video, and I hope it's helped. If you're looking for some good reads, then those really are some very good reads. Do please, as I say, like and subscribe. If you'd like to buy me a coffee or a tea, just go to my Ko-fi account, which is always in the description box. Make sure that you look after all your furry family members, or scaly, or what else do we have? Fur, feathers and scales. And please look after yourselves, my friends. Stay strange in these times of troubles, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.